What's going on, YouTube? This is Luke Henson with Endless Entrepreneurs, just coming to you guys with another video. It is Tuesday night, I believe, Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Going to talk. I've had a lot of inquiries the last couple weeks on how I keep my inventory, how do I maintain it, how do I track it, how do I store it, just kind of A to Z. What do I do with my inventory for eBay and Poshmark? So that's what this video is going to be about. It is a live stream, so if you're watching this after the fact, and I'm interacting with questions in the chat, that is why. Feel free to drop comments afterward, additional questions after you've watched this, and I will definitely get back to you. If you're new to my channel, I am a eBay and Poshmark reseller. I also am a real estate investor. I have a rental property, soon to have another one, and mostly long-term, well, only long-term rentals right now. And I also work full-time in the corporate world, so kind of juggle all three facets and document on this channel, primarily the reselling and real estate on this channel. So welcome back if you're not new to my channel, and if you are new, then I'm really glad to have you here. I'm going to let people filter in here for a second, but I am going to talk about, you can even see bins right behind me. My system is not very complex. I keep it pretty simple for myself. I do sell on multiple platforms. I sell on eBay and Poshmark, and I have almost my full inventory cross-listed on both platforms. So the way that I keep it allows me to do that. And I actually am adding Mercari. Actually, today I just got my first items up on there, working with my VA to get those items up and starting to kind of tweak the system to handle that as well. So I'll discuss what I'm doing with that. There probably are even better ways to do this as you grow and get bigger and bigger. Right now, this works for me and the workflow that I do. To give some context before I really dive in, I use a VA for all of my listing, a virtual assistant. And I use contract photographers, so a bunch of local photographers in this area. They do all my photography, they do all the measurements, and they upload everything to Dropbox for my VA. So I don't actually I do some photos here and there. Actually, this week I've done more than I probably have in the last like 6 months. But I don't, that part of my business is kind of turning, I won't say automated, but it has, I'm kind of hands off with it. So this inventory system allows them to work in that ecosystem for it to work. And it allows me around a full-time job to be able to ship and fulfill orders and manage all of that. So I just wanted to give that context before I jumped in, because there are a lot of ways you can do this. This is the simplest for me, being that even though I would probably work full-time hours at this full-time job, but it does allow me to grow. I have almost 10,000 items in my inventory. I have like 3,400 active listings. So I feel like it's a pretty sizable part-time business. And if this works, this simple system works for this type of scale, hopefully it'll work for the majority of you who are either just starting out or maybe doing it for a while, looking to make a change. But in any case, I'll also refer you, so Daily Refinement, Chris Lynn over there, he has a similar system, slightly different. He maximizes his space even better. Space isn't as big of an issue for me. And he has tons of great content over there also on inventory storage. I know a lot of the resellers in this community that I network with, they either kind of subscribe to this or to his as far as like an inventory storage method or some type of hybrid. So if maybe this isn't for you, get done watching this video, I highly recommend go check out some of his stuff as well. So in any case, I'm going to jump right in, and I will take plenty of Q&A. If you have questions, I'll be checking the live chat. I probably will share my screen at some point if I can. I haven't actually shared screen on the new YouTube Live since I've started making content again. So I'm not sure if it is the same as the Google Hangouts, but we'll try to figure out. Hopefully I won't end the stream trying to do it. But in any case, so let me jump in and talk about first of all, let's talk about how I store inventory. So I actually was doing some photos today. So the first thing I do is every piece of inventory gets its own individual poly bag. So you can do a couple things. There's actually, one second. Let me grab a box of these. I got them over here somewhere. Cool. All right. So this is a very cheap alternative to the link in my profile. I have like in the description after this video, you'll see, I don't think it's there right now. I usually have to add it after. There are the 12 by 15 poly bags that I like to use. They're clear. They have like a little flap lock on them, and that's how I flip the flap lock over, and that's why I put this tape across the inventory number. The cheap alternative is if you go to Walmart, they have these twist tie bread bags. I think these are like $3.50 for a 100 count. Might have been a little cheaper than that. This bag specifically is not the 12 by 15. I actually ran out because I'd given the last of mine to one of my photographers. and this is what I picked up. So you can do either. And I see we have someone new to the channel, so welcome. Thank you for stopping in. You haven't missed much. We're just getting going here. So anyways, every single piece of inventory gets this bag. The second piece to it is every piece of inventory that is a unique size and style / brand gets its own inventory number. And the reason I make that distinction, so this one is Z687. The reason I make that distinction is I buy in bulk now. So I buy a lot of pallets in liquidation. So I pretty frequently will get the same item, but I'll get like 20 of them, all the same size, all the same brand, and all the same style. That will get one listing. I'll change the quantity to match however many I have, and then it'll get the one inventory number. So I know, and I'll talk about the bins in a second, but I would know in a bin that I've got 20 of these for that listing, all with Z687 in them. So hopefully that makes sense. The second thing to talk about with the inventory number is use a letter in the alphabet first. And I use it for a couple reasons. For my business, I just always had kind of done that. And then a number range. So this specific one is Z687. I'll talk a little more in detail as I go why I do that. And it has some specific nuances too to how I operate. You can do any number of things. Some people do, instead of doing Z687 or, a specific number, they'll do like this number, this is Z, right? And all Z items are in the Z bin. And so maybe it can fit 30 items. And then they go through and they just find the item that looks like it. I don't like that. I like to know exactly the item package so that I'm sifting through the bin, I can find it. I have a lot of similar items, similar colors, similar styles. I don't want to mess up the sizing of those. And for me, I store in my my detached garage and shed. I used to store in a non-climate controlled storage unit. So what's really important to me is that they're sealed in these bags, and then they go into these bins, and it kind of protects from everything. I actually had we had a hurricane come through, knocked a tree on my garage, which had my inventory, had water pouring in the garage for like a day and a half straight. It just rained like, I can't remember how many inches it rained. And I only lost like a couple pieces of inventory, and it was because a branch actually damaged a bin when it came in. All the other bins had water and crap on top of them. I just turned them. They dumped off. Every single piece of inventory was fine. Ran a massive dehumidifier in there and had no issues. So was super lucky. But that's just a reason why I take that extra step. It gets this clear poly bag. It gets kind of a semi-seal with the inventory number here, and then it goes in these bins. For bins, I've used every type of bin you can think of. I used to use these non-clear bins, but I couldn't fit 3 on a shelf. And these aren't the traditional shelves I use. I use these are actually for in my house right now. I'm storing a lot of my accessories and later items on these because it's just 2 across, not as heavy. And this is like the second floor of my house. In the garage, I use these. They're Husqvarna is the brand, and they're 5-tier wire rack shelving. I find them at Home Depot, and you can find coupons all the time at Home Depot for like $15, $20 off. And with those coupons, you can get I've found them on sale as cheap as $75 up to $100. They come apart really easy. They're kind of like the snap and lock with like a wire grate that sits on top of them. And so I like that because I've changed locations of inventory so many times that it's so easy to take those apart and put them back together wherever I go. But I normally can fit 3 of these across on those shelves. So I can fit 15 bins per shelf. I usually fit anywhere between let's see. These are pretty distinct number range behind me. I would say, so this has got like 40 items in it. This is accessories. That one's got less than that because they're bigger. I mean, anywhere from 20 to 45 items, depending on what type of item they are. I love these Walmart ones. So God, we've had a new puppy since Saturday, and sleep has been a not a common thing. But I like these ones from Walmart. And let me show you actually what the tag looks like on them. They're like, I think they're $740 is what I normally get them for. But let's see if it'll focus in. So that is the bin I like to use. It's a 66 quart. It's, let me see the dimensions on it. So these are 24 inches tall, 16 inches, 16 24 inches long. They're 16 inches wide, and it's about almost just under 14 inches tall. So I can fit 3 of these perfectly on those the Husqvarna shelves, which is what I want. I want no dead space whatsoever, which is why I actually upgrade. I have like almost 100 of these old. Let me see if I have them. This is what I used to keep inventory in. So these, I used to get these really cheap from Walmart. But they're awkward. They taper up, but they don't really give you extra room. And so I only could fit 2 of these on those shelves. So I had tons of dead space. So I've actually cycled all those out. I use them to sort when I'm unpacking pallets. So they haven't been a total waste, which has been nice. But yeah, so kind of getting back to what you're talking about here. So every piece of inventory goes in one of these 12 by 15 clear poly bags. Every single one gets an inventory number, and then they go in these bins. So that's like the physical storage components to what I do. It's that simple. There's nothing more complicated than that. With the item cells, I find it, put it in a poly mailer, and out the door it goes. If it needs a box, a priority box, or flat rate envelope, it still goes in the gray poly mailer, and then in with that. I like the extra protection. I think it's just a good presentation for the buyer. That's just how I ship. So that's the physical storage point. I don't see any questions on that. I think it's pretty straightforward, but feel free, if you have them, drop them in. I'll answer them as I go. So we'll pause kind of there as the first part. So someone just asked a question about my contractors, how I pay them, things like that. I'm going to save that one for the end. I will answer that though. I'll answer any storage questions as we go, and I'll save any non-storage ones till the end. So yeah. So that's physical storage. Now, moving on to numbering items, why I number them, how I number them, and how I find them. So I've used alphabet numbers just to kind of separate the time period and how I organize them in like my garage, wherever else. So like, for instance, I know in my shed, I have items S through Z. Let's just say, for instance, I don't have Z right here, but like, and then I know in my garage, I have A through F. And I know in my attic up here, I have this range. So it helps me kind of segment where I keep stuff so that when I'm going to find it after it's sold, I know which place to go to directionally. Then, so that's kind of like the letters, more of like the directional where to head to, because I can organize by that. You can do it by number range too, but that's just kind of what I do. And so Dan also asked, how would I consolidate inventory? And I'm going to get to that. That's a great question though. And it's probably the most distinct difference between how I do things and how Chris over at Daily Refinement does things. And they both have a purpose. So I'll talk through that. That's a really good question. And someone just said, do you use a smaller poly bag for ties? No, I just use the same one. I mean, these are so cheap that I just roll them up. I mean, I pretty much roll these to size. So if it's a smaller item, I put the item all the way down at the bottom of the bag, and then I would just kind of like roll the bag up like a sleeping bag almost on it, and then tape it. Hopefully that makes sense. So anyway, so the letter really is like my directional beacon. Like if you think about being in a warehouse, like it's in aisle A, right? And that's all. And then within aisle A has all the numbers. So it's just kind of like a simple inventory system, nothing too crazy. So someone just asked, what happens when the item that is sold is all the way at the bottom of the bin? I dig for it. That's simple. I won't keep any more than 30 to 40 items in here. They're all kept face up so that as I'm going through, I can see the number. They're also, for the most part, they're kept kind of in order. So I know that like whatever number's on the top, I can pretty much tell if it's going to be top, halfway down, bottom, etc. And again, there's never so many items that I can't find something. So the shelf I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you should join late, but I get them. They're Husqvarna. They are at Home Depot. That's where I find them. I'm sure you can find them other places, but they're a 5-tier wire rack shelving. You can get them between $75 and $100. So anyways, the letter is region for me, kind of like that's basically it. And then the number is just how I sequence my bins. And so we'll start to jump into the other question about how I consolidate bins. And I'll actually talk through them and use one of these lighter ones as an example. All right, so for instance, I have, and I normally always use a black marker. I just didn't have one around me when I did these, so I was lazy, and I shouldn't have because I hate it. I can't see it as well. But so, for instance, and trying to hold this up so it'll actually focus. This is Z375 through Z411. So if Z410 sold, all I'm doing is finding that range of numbers in my Z area. So this happens to be my Z shelving. I'm finding the right bin that matches that range of numbers. So this would have 410 in it. And then I'm literally just sifting through and pulling it out. Like nothing complex. That's what I'm doing. When these bins, so here comes the storage part. When these bins get about halfway and with a neighboring bin, I consolidate them and update the number range. And so what I mean by that is, so if this went halfway down and it's, let's say it's 375 to 411, and then we have neighboring bin over here, which is 331 to 374. If at any time this bin or the bin on the top side of that range gets low enough where I can combine them, I combine them and I just literally put a new piece of tape and update the number range to include both. So I don't take the time to get the exact number. I just know that these two bins were this. Now they've expanded to this. And when you think about volumes, right? Like right now I'm listing anywhere from like 800, like, well, this last month was kind of slower, but normally 800 to like 1,500 items a month, somewhere in that wide range. I'm selling somewhere between like 350 and 450, pushing 500 maybe this month. We'll see. Like that range, I'm not going to run on numbers really anytime soon where it's going to be so excessive that the SKU number is way too long. So this works really well for me. I never have to reuse the number. I never have to remember to reuse a number. And I'm not saying it's the best way, but with my model, it's the best way. And I've talked through this with Chris a couple times over Daily Refinement. So my biggest problem, I'm going to describe why, and hopefully it'll make sense. So the way my model works with my contract photographers is I drop off, or they come get it, or I meet them, and I give them 4 bins of unmarked inventory. I have no really good way to be like, hey, these numbers are the ones to use only, right? So like, let's think about reusing a number. If I'm like, okay, bin, this one's halfway full. I want to use 397 and 410 and 401 and all these random numbers. So now not only do I have to drop off the bin, I would have to inventory the numbers I want them to use, match them to the quantity I gave them so they have enough inventory numbers to use. Then when I get the bin back, I have to take each individual one, go and put it in the bin it belongs in. So like, think about all the time it takes to do that. Versus what I do now, I pack these bins unmarked with just a bunch of inventory. I give it to my photographer. They are assigned a letter. So every single photographer has their own unique letter they use. I actually refer to them by U and Z and S when I'm talking to my virtual assistants. And they just keep working up. So whatever number they get to, they work up. And maybe at some point I'll add, if they were K, maybe they're going to be KK. If they're A, they might be AA. And if, just whatever. And maybe I don't want to do 4-digit numbers. I want to do 5, whatever. I'm able to, they just can keep working their way up. And then when I get the bins back from them, they've already labeled them with the range, because the way they prepare them is they bag them and tag them and put them in the bins. They're just giving them back to me already prepared. So all I do is take the bin and just stick it on the shelf where I want it to go. So it cuts out all that time of my overhead, my time consuming, trying to replace specific inventory numbers and maximize that. When in reality, if I just spend twice a month consolidating bins, I'm not losing out on that much space, and space isn't that big of a deal. Someone asked how I store glassware. I don't store glassware. I don't sell it. I sell exclusively apparel. A very few amount of hard goods that I've just come across. But I pretty much am all apparel, streamlining apparel, because I buy in bulk. So that's that. Hopefully that makes sense why I do it that way. There's a couple other perks to this. The fact that each contractor has their own letter means I know 2 things. I know later in the number range that they've, very recently prepared them. I know earlier in the number range they probably prepared it a long time ago. I can quality check when the things are selling. I know, okay, those photos aren't as good as ours or whatever. And it really allows me to quality check across each photographer to see what's going on and tell who did what. So there's that piece of it. And someone just asked the question. This is a great question. So I have 3,000 items. How do you find an item if you make a mistake and place it in the wrong bin? It's a struggle. The thing, and it doesn't happen very often. I can probably count on the number of times, and probably less than 10 that's happened this year. When it does happen, though, I usually can tell. So, like, say it was like R400. I at least can narrow down to like 4 or 5 bins that it probably should be in based on the sequence of when they prepared it, which is honestly another advantage to doing the numbering system like this. Had I been reusing inventory numbers, I don't necessarily know when that item was listed. Because I'm always using sequential adding up as I go, I always know the time period roughly that they prepared them, right? Like I can go back and look in InkFrog and be like, okay, that listing was created on July 12th. That means I got that, this range of numbers I put up during that month, and I can pretty much figure out 4 or 5 bins it should be in, and it really narrows it down. And so someone just asked again the question, and you can definitely recommend rewatching this because I'm kind of going through in sequence, but I merge the bins. When the neighboring bins get too low, I merge them into one bin and just update the number sequence. All right, so I think I addressed how I bag and tag and label my inventory. I've addressed how I store it. I've addressed why I number things the way I number them, which I think is clear. So the next piece to talk about is how I manage the multiple platforms and when things sell. I think that's the other big question I've been getting a lot lately. Everybody has... Oh, and I also want to talk to you first. So the big advantage of not doing it this way and doing it the way kind of Chris over on Daily Refinement does it in a lot of the resellers, which is I have an exact range of items that go in this bin, and I always use those inventory numbers. So when A400 sells, I use A400 to list a new item, and it goes back in this bin, is that if you have a very small amount of storage, you are always maximizing your current setup, and you're never overgrowing your infrastructure past the items that you have. So what happens to me is at any given time, I have a bunch of bins that are kind of half full while I'm creating new bins. My contractors creating new bins, which means I have to somehow handle the growth of those new bins, whether it be more shelving, more space. That's the disadvantage to how I'm doing it. The nice part for me is my property is fairly big. I have a 10 by 12 shed. I have a detached garage. It's probably like 15 by 25. I've got an upstairs attic here. I'm using this, but I have all this space. It's not a big deal. It's going to be a while before it is a big deal. Thank goodness. But that is the other piece to the other side of the coin, so to speak, if you didn't want to do that. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm just looking at the questions right now before I move on to the next part, because it's kind of the other real important part. How do you find everything? Yeah, okay. I think I covered everything there, so I think we're good. So I'm going to put this back on the shelf just because I feel awkward holding this. And these shelving units, I actually really like these. I just found them. So they're from Walmart, and they're like 30-some bucks. They only hold 2 bins, as you can see, but they're this rigid plastic, which is actually fairly durable. And they hook together. They have these hooks. They like latch on together. I really like them. I've been using them for smaller spaces that my bigger shelves won't fit into. And then obviously inside the house. So just another option. So the next part is I list on, everything gets first listed on InkFrog. I heavily utilize the custom SKU field on eBay and InkFrog. And then once it's on InkFrog, it's been priced and set live, it gets cross-posted onto Poshmark. And now I'm actually adding, literally today, I got my first listings on Mercari. I've got working on a system right now. My second virtual assistant is starting to cross-list stuff on Mercari. And I'm actually brainstorming with my main virtual assistant. She's an absolute rock star. How to basically thinking about having her price and set, because right now I price all my items. So like she sets all the drafts, I price them, set them live, and then she cross posts them. Coming up with a strategy how she can price them, set it live, and do the listing across all 3 platforms right at the beginning. So there's no waiting on me. I'm not the bottleneck. I haven't really figured out how to do that yet, but I'm working through it with her. And she's a very experienced eBay seller to begin with, knows the ins and outs of Poshmark. So like it's a really good opportunity for me. I just need to figure out how to utilize it and how to kind of execute on it. So anyways, it's a little bit of a tangent. There is a button here, and I don't know if it's a share screen button. I'm hoping it doesn't absolutely demolish my live stream here, but I really want to share my screen. Let me see if there's any other. No. All right, I'm going to hit this button. I have no idea what it does. Oh, no, that's not going to do it. Darn. I'm not sure with the new live stream if I can actually share my screen. That's really annoying. That's all right. I can use a whiteboard to show it. It's not a big deal. But I am missing a marker. It's a big deal. 1 second. All right. So, all right. So hopefully everyone is familiar with the custom SKU field on an eBay listing. If you aren't, you need to make yourself familiar with it. It's a field that does not show up in the listing to the buyer. It only shows up on your side as an eBay seller. So you can use it for a lot of cool things. It's a free form text field, which means you can type whatever you want into it. If you're an Excel user or like a data nerd like I am, you can really set it up to do text to columns and get a lot of great reporting detail out of it. So I've set mine up so that I can just do an eBay sales extract at any point in time. And when I do the eBay sales extract, I can go to my custom SKU field and I just text to column the whole thing, and I get like a couple different pieces of information. And then I actually can do a profit loss, basically a margin analysis per item, because I put my cost right into my custom SKU field. InkFrog also allows you to do a specific cost field, but I think it's just nice to have that backup right there in eBay for me to use it anytime I need it. But so anyways, so custom SKU field. I'm sorry, my handwriting is terrible, but let's use the example. So we've got our Z687 inventory. So let's just say this is getting listed today. It just was, let's imagine my photographer photographed this, measured it, took pictures, put them up there for my VA. VA took it, drafted the listing, and this is what she's going to put in the listing to start with. So she's going to put in the SKU, custom SKU, it's going to be Z687. And that's all that's going to be in it. Just the inventory number to start with. I'm going to walk this through by my workflow. So just the custom SKU has Z687. Then I will go in, I'll set a price live. And when I set the price live, I'll put a dash and I'll put the cost of the good. Now I know, because I do all the purchasing, what it is. I know when I make my bulk buys what it is. So let's just use round numbers and we'll just say $5. So then I will go in, I will add the price, and I'll put my cost right there. So I just put a dash and 5.00, so $5. This dash is what I use to do the text to columns with. It's like my divider to make columns in Excel. For those of you who are familiar with Excel, it'll make sense. If not, it's not necessary to maintain your inventory. But so now I have the location of my item, and I have the cost of goods in there. So then once it's live, my VA goes back in and cross-posts it to Poshmark, and now will be Mercari. So what I have her do is when it goes live to Poshmark, she will add a P for Poshmark. Super simple. No, I don't want to overcomplicate it for myself. Just adds a P on the end of the SKU. So now I just have Z687P. Now I know instantly when that item sells that it's also cross-listed to Poshmark. Now you might ask, well, if you cross-list everything, why do you put that there? Well, there's a time period where we do cross-listing in batches where stuff might not be cross-listed yet. There's no point wasting time sifting through Poshmark trying to find the item, wasting time if it hasn't been cross-listed yet. There's also a bunch of older inventory I have that I haven't bothered to cross-list because I didn't want to. So this P really allows and saves time on the back end. When that item sells, if it sells on eBay, I need to go find it on Poshmark and delist it. And if it sells on Poshmark, well, I know it's been on eBay because my first listing always goes through eBay. You might have a different process, but either way, this P signifies it's on Poshmark. The fact there's a SKU number in there means it was listed on eBay for me. And then now all I'm having them do is add a M when they list it to Mercari. So now I know it's on 3 platforms, eBay with the primary, P for Poshmark, and M for Mercari. I also use for Poshmark, it's not just about understanding and identifying it on eBay. So when it sells on eBay, I obviously know Z687. I'm going to go find my bin range that has it, and I'm going to find the item. On Poshmark, what I do is they don't have a custom SKU field, at least that I know of yet. It would be really nice if they did. But so I put this at the very top of my description in my listing. I haven't found a better way to do it. Chris actually puts his in his photos, so you can just scroll through the photos and you don't have to scroll down, which is nice. Like an overlay, I think they do, or maybe just a photo of it. I'm not sure which he does anymore. He's done a couple of variations. That's another way you can do it. But that way, when it sells on Poshmark, you know which bin locations it is, and then you go take it down on eBay. Mercari will do something similar. I haven't looked at the listings today. Literally, my VA just got I think 10 listings up. So I need to go look at how she's doing it, but I believe it's a description field similar. I have know little to nothing about Mercari other than I know I want to sell on it. So this is how I figure out how to sell is I just go do it. And I troubleshoot and figure out as I go. So similar thing, it'll go in there. So that's that simple. So now I have item location for all 3 platforms, and I have the cost of goods right in my custom SKU field. Now, if you say you do good till canceled, or you relist every 30 days, whatever, say you want to figure out how long something's been up for. So the other cool thing you can do, right, if you do the text to columns, use that custom SKU field, is you put on the dash, and maybe I put the date, and I don't do specific days. I probably would do just month. So I do 01/17. So now I also know if I'm ever scrolling through my active inventory, dang, I've had that item for, almost 2 years. It hasn't sold. Maybe I should auction it. Maybe I should cut the price. Maybe this can become a really cool inventory management tool that's really simple to add. And in your workflow, every time you start your listing live, hey, I'm just going to put this, this, and this. And if I ever cross post, I just add in the identifier for the other platforms. So hopefully that makes sense. I really try to keep things as simple as I can. There is one thing I agree on with Chris a lot is that reselling is a fairly simple business. It's not overly complex. It's probably one of the simplest businesses out there. I think I was listening to his video the other day. He made the point you don't have to manufacture anything. You don't have to know how to build something. You just find a product and sell it. It's already built. So really, inventory, listing, presentation, those are the big things. This is how I try to simplify and keep my storage. Hopefully that makes sense. I think I hit on all the big pieces we talked about, kind of how I store it, the plastic bags with the label, how I label it. We talked about the bins, why I number them the way I number them, how I consolidate them. We've talked about the racks, like where I get my storage shelves from. We talked about how I use the custom SKU field to do that. So that's really the basics of how, and this is for anyone of any size, right? The one big tip I'm going to give, I don't care how early you are starting off a reselling career. I don't care if you have 10 items or 100 items. Start with an inventory numbering system now, right away. I didn't till I was 400 items deep, and it was so annoying. Starting an inventory system and then having all this old stuff that wasn't, and having to go sift through it every time something's sold. I mean, don't do that. Take the time and have an inventory system from go. You will be very grateful and thankful you did. I promise. Someone just asked, can you search your listings on Mercari? I honestly know I'm probably not fit to answer any questions about Mercari other than the basics, like you need photos and a description to list on there. My VA tells me basically, because she sells on Mercari as well, like all the data they have for either a Poshmark listing or an eBay listing is more than sufficient to cross list on the Mercari. So that's the extent that I know. I know the shipping's a bit different. I've been reading a little more about that today. I'm trying to figure out what settings I want to use, but I don't see a lot of other questions. I'm going to go back to the one question about how do I store glassware. So I think this is not the glassware one specifically why it's interesting, but this is why as you start off reselling, I think it's important, one, to try selling a bunch of different genres to see what you like. But I think it's also really important that once you figure out what you like selling, hone in on how to store and organize that genre and try not to deviate too far outside of it. Because then you get into a lot of complexities with storage and numbering, and certain things require different ways to be stored, right? Like glassware needs to be stored way differently than clothing. Needs to be shipped way differently. You know, like there's just all these things that change the model and how you do things when you deviate from genre to genre. Not saying that you shouldn't, not saying you shouldn't diversify, but it is much easier to create a system that's workable on one or two things that are really similar or easy to do, like for you or you like to do. So just a little tip to take with you. We are coming up on 35 minutes. I try to keep all my videos at 30 minutes, so I'll take another 30 seconds to a minute. If other questions come in, I will answer them. They don't have to be about this topic. I always will answer any questions I can. If you have questions later after you've watched this, drop them in the comments, or the quicker way to even get a response is shoot me a direct message on Endless Entrepreneurs on Instagram. I reply to those faster than comments on YouTube typically, but I will look at all of them nonetheless. And definitely, if you guys can hit that like button for me, YouTube likes that, and I appreciate it. Someone said, do you relist returns or count as a loss? That's a great question. So I relist all my returns unless there was a flaw that caused the return that I overlooked. Like if I made a mistake, most time if I made a mistake and there's a flaw or something like that, I pretty much just have the buyer keep it because it's just not worth my overhead to return it. If there was nothing wrong with it and they just didn't fit, whatnot, to me, I already have that listing that comes back in. I don't reuse inventory numbers, remember? So the entire listing that I used before can be reused again. I don't have to update anything. I literally just relist it once I get the inventory back, and then I go drop it back in the bin it came from. So yeah, I do relist. Someone asked, reminder, do you pay your contractors? Thank you. I knew I was missing the question. So do you pay your contractors via PayPal or via business check? Is there any advantage of one or the other? So I'm in North Carolina. Laws vary state to state, so I want to be very careful that I'm going to speak to North Carolina because that's what I know. I just had a call with my accountant about this it was like last week actually. So basically, PayPal does I think it's called a 1099K. Hold on, let me see if I can find it specifically. 1 second, because I literally was just having this conversation. Sorry. Yes, it's a 1099. I was right on that. So PayPal, I believe it's for business PayPals. If you have them invoice you through their business PayPal and you pay it through there, number one, PayPal charges a fee for a business invoice. It's like a cost doing business for them. They track those invoices for all the business account owners. And then they send them what they call a 1099K. I don't know the ins and outs specifically what makes it different. But that actually serves as a 1099 issued form. So for me, that's how I have all of my photographers and their businesses. They all have PayPals. It was actually a prerequisite when I was screening the photographers that they had to have a business PayPal. Actually, all of them that I use have actual photography businesses. That's actually been a really cool niche I fell into, is that a lot of these photographers, their businesses are very seasonal, up and down, weekendy, and they like the steadiness of having 100 or 200 items to do every week, and they know they have that flat fee coming in. So I have them do that, and then that takes care of it on the tax end for me. Keep in mind, in the way I live, anything over $600, you have to request. I forget the name of the form. Basically, you have to issue a 1099 for each of them. So my accountant confirmed for me that the 1099K will serve as that and covers me for any audit purposes. So that's what I will be doing for this year. Hopefully that makes sense. Someone just said, do you go thrifting just for fun now? I don't. This is going to sound, I'm kind of weird. So I liked the thrill of the hunt, but more than the thrill of the hunt is I like building things. I love building businesses. Like I like systems and processes, and I'm just weird. Like I like that. I like the scalability. So for me, thrifting was the beginning to get me jump started and get the capital to do what I'm doing now. I've always wanted to go where I'm going now. So that just was the longer road to get there for me. Someone just asked, do I know any good Canadian flippers that I can watch on YouTube? I don't. I don't consume an awful lot of content. If I'm going to be honest, I just don't have a lot of time to. I watch a couple. Like I said, I watch a lot of Chris's videos because me and him are, we're kind of friends, and we think very similar. I watch a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk. It's not reselling related. I just like his stuff. He's very motivational. I spend a lot of time consuming self-development stuff, not really reselling. So sorry, I don't have a good recommendation. Someone said no one thinks they need inventory management until they do. Exactly. W-9, thank you. Yes, you have to have them fill out a W-9 so that you can then 1099 them. It's on the tip of my tongue. I appreciate that. No problem, Dan. Hopefully this is helpful to some. I mean, I've been so happy now that I've gotten back into creating content. I didn't realize how much I missed it till I stopped doing it. It does take a lot of time and preparation, which is why I got away from it when my business was growing like really, really fast. And now I've gotten a good handle on it as I'm handling the growth, figuring out the issues. So now I'm kind of getting back into it. This is the last question I'm going to take because I do need to wrap up. We have a new puppy downstairs, and Shannon's been on puppy duty long enough, so I got to go help her out. We said, about how many wholesale vendors are you buying pallets from? What percentage do you find are trustworthy? So I buy from two main suppliers. I have a primary who sends me stuff on a monthly, regular basis. Probably sends me anywhere from 1,000 to he's sent me 4,000 at once before items. And then I have a secondary supplier that I use as like a filler when things get slow. And that's actually the last pallet I got. If you follow me on Instagram, I bought like a lower end men's lot. It was like a JCPenney's closeout type stuff just to kind of fill the void. That one, I don't share my primary one, but I do share the secondary one because I think he's done good by me and he's done good by some of my friends. So, and he's pretty transparent, and that's Jasper over at Smash Lots. So feel free to look him up. I highly recommend using the smaller lots just to test it out. I don't really have a good percentage to know what are trustworthy because I've only ordered from those two. Well, I've ordered from blue lots as well. I don't really care for blue lots that much anymore. In the beginning they were good, but they just don't have a lot of apparel anymore. But yeah, I don't really have a percentage for you. I'm sorry. I will say that you got to cast a wide net and you got to try out a lot before you find one you like. Usually, I just happen to get really lucky with my primary one. All right, guys, I am going to wrap up. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, if you can hit that like button or share the video with somebody you think would be valuable to, it definitely helps me out. I appreciate it. Any questions, drop them in the comments or shoot me a DM on Instagram. And if you have any suggestions how to improve my process, knowing kind of roughly my system, I'm all about hearing them. You would be surprised the amount of stuff I've learned from viewers who are just doing things better than I am. I am humble enough to accept criticism and to improve processes if it means increasing my bottom line or saving time for me. So feel free to drop them below if you do have those suggestions. Have an awesome night, everyone, and have a good Thanksgiving. I'm not sure I'll have another video before Thanksgiving, so enjoy your Thanksgiving. Hope you guys all get to relax, have some great food, and enjoy your families. See you guys.